For this painting, I am using Shinhan Professional watercolors. They come in tubes, however, I pour them in the pans that you see on to the right of the screen here. I am also using a Sharpie to do my drawing, but if you're more comfortable with pencil, by all means use that. And I'm using Master Touch watercolor paper. This is 8 inches by 8 inches. Just taking a piece from my pad, and I will make sure to tape it down using some masking tape. The reason I tape my paper down to a board is to give it a nice white border when it's finished, and it also helps keep my paper from rippling or bending or doing things like that when I am painting with the watercolor. So I like to give it a nice white border and tape all of the pieces down, all of the edges. I'm just using regular masking tape, but you can also use painter's tape for this as well. All right, I'm going to begin drawing, and like I said, I will be using a Sharpie just because it's easier to see, but you can use a pencil. And I was going to start in the center, but I'm going to go a little bit lower. This is about the middle of my paper, a little bit lower than my center line, and I'm going to start with an oval. This will be the nose of my gnome. So I want it to be a pretty good size. They can always have huge noses. Then I'm going to make a line that starts on the side of the nose and kind of comes up just a little bit and then back down. This is going to be where the hat begins. I'm going to make slightly slanted lines on both sides of the hat. And then I'm going to connect those lines with a slightly curved line. That'll be the base of the hat. Then the top of the hat could just go straight up to a point, or it could be really floppy. I'm going to make mine kind of go up, but then kind of hang down on one side. So that's really up to you and what you want your hat to look like. Some can just be straight up, or some can go way over to the side. It can end at a point, but I think I'm going to end with a little poof ball. So instead of just stopping at the point, I'm adding a poofy ball to the end of my hat. Next, I want to draw in the beard of my gnome, and to do that I use just these slanted lines, kind of zigzag lines, all the way down to the bottom center. Gnomes can have lots of different shaped beards or mustaches, but I'm keeping mine pretty straightforward today. All right, that's the basic shape of the gnome. Now I'm going to add a little indication of a body down here. I don't have much room on my paper, so I really can't go too crazy with the body. Then I'm going to add kind of a little indication of socks underneath the body, and then some shoes. And I'm out of space, so I really can't make too big of shoes or too long of legs, so we're just going to keep these short and small and sweet here. They're just kind of going outside. So there's the legs of my gnome. Now I want to add some arms, and I don't know what it is, but I just love lanterns. So I decided it would be fun to have my gnome holding a little lantern, maybe walking through the snow. So there's his little glove, and it's going to be holding a little hook part of a lantern. And so I'm going to have that shown with this shapes here, and try to keep my shapes pretty simple. And then I will add the X through the center of the lantern so that it looks like it is all together. Now I'm trying to make another arm that's about the same area, same size as my first one, and this one's just going to have the mitten open like so. Now I could stop here, but I want to add a couple other details just to kind of show where the gnome is. So I'm just going to put a line to show where the horizon line is. There's the ground. And then I thought it might be kind of nice to indicate some trees too. So I'm starting at the edge of my paper and I'm making a zigzag line down to indicate some pine trees. Maybe he's walking through the woods or the forest, and we have some pine trees kind of on either side of him as he's maybe made a path down the middle. So those are my pine trees. And that is all I am going to draw. The rest I'm going to add with my watercolor paint. So I'm putting my marker down and getting out some paint. Now for the painting part, I did speed it up just a little bit to kind of keep the video moving here. I am starting off by filling the sky in with a nice dark blue. I'm using Prussian blue, which is one of my favorite blues. It's staining and rich and colorful. So I like the depth of this color. It's a very vivid color. And I'm really trying to make sure I fill this area with lots of paint, lots of dark color, just adding more in while the painting is wet. I am being very careful to paint around my gnome. And you can use kind of whatever brush you're the more comfortable with using. I like using this kind of angled brush here. I can get into some of the tight spots, but it also has really good coverage for some of the larger areas. So I'm just trying to fill this up with water and then drop in that blue paint while it's still wet. Now a fun trick that I like to use is to sprinkle salt. So this is just table salt, and I'm sprinkling it while my sky is wet, and it just gives such a really beautiful kind of snowy-like sky, especially for winter. So I like to do that. I sprinkle the salt while it's wet and then let it dry. Now I am going in with some water and then adding some yellow to my lantern to make it look like my lantern is glowing. And then I'm going to try to kind of fill in some blue around it. And of course, yellow and blue together make green, and it's okay if it looks a little greenish. I'm hoping once I paint the green of the trees, then the ground won't look so green. I was hoping to make it kind of a bluish, so it looks like snow on the ground at night. I'm really trying to stay away from the center of my lantern though. I want that to stay yellow. Just try to keep the blues around the edges so it looks like it's glowing. All right, I had to let a little bit of paint dry. It's still a little wet, but I decided to kind of jump in and work on some beard. And for the beard, I just mixed some blue and some brown. It makes kind of a light gray. It's very watery so that it's not super dark. And I'm just trying to add a little bit of shading to the beard. I'm leaving some of it white, but I wanted to add just a little bit of gray, especially towards some of the edges. Next, I'm mixing some skin color. I'm just mixing some pink and some yellow, and that gives me kind of a nice skin color. If you have orange on your palette, you can also just do that, maybe watered down, and that can create kind of a nice color as well for the nose. I left a little highlight on the edge of the nose just by leaving the white of the paper. And then now I wanted to start filling in some of the clothing with some red. And I'm using a little bit of cadmium red and more of like a rose red color for the red. You can use whatever color you want for your gnome. I went kind of traditional, thinking a little bit of the Santa vibe. So I'm just making the red outfit, and I will also be putting some red in the hat. Now I wasn't patient enough at this point, and you can see my red is starting to seep into my background on the top part of the hat. And I'm not panicking too much. I can just add a little bit of blue over the top. But this is why it's good to be patient and actually wait for your background to dry before painting something right next to it. So I waited a little bit, but obviously not long enough. I'm trying to keep the center part of my hat a little bit lighter by making it more watery, and then I'm adding more pigment to the outside of my hat so that that's a little bit darker. This is a way to shade in watercolor. I want to try to give the indication that it's kind of a rounded shape. So lighter on the inside and darker on the outside. Next, I'm trying to mix a green that I will be using for the trees. So I mixed my green by mixing some yellow and some of that Prussian blue that I used in my sky. Creates kind of a nice dark green. And I'm just using that to kind of fill in the trees. I am going to add some white gouache later to make it look like the trees have a little bit of snow on them. So this is just kind of a base color for now. Next color I'm using is like a Payne's gray, and I'm using that as kind of a dark color for the mittens. And then I also want to use it on some other areas of the painting as well. I think I'm going to go ahead and make the shoes kind of this dark gray or black color. So I'm going to go ahead and paint those in, leaving kind of those little socks white. And then while I have this color on my brush, I thought it would be good to do the top of my lantern and the bottom of my lantern with that color as well. I'm rinsing off my brush, and I am now adding a little bit of just pure yellow to my lantern to make it a little bit brighter in the center, or more vibrant in the center. I'm touching up some of the blue in the sky so it's not looking like red took over too much. And then I'm using a light blue, like a cerulean blue or a sky blue, something like that. Just real light and watery, just to give a little bit of shading to the white parts of my hat, and also to the edges of my gloves and the socks. Next, I'm using gouache, and I love to use gouache for whites on top of watercolor. It's really nice to have that opaque white. And I'm just adding a couple of designs to the hat. I thought it would make it a little more interesting, a little more gnome-like. So I'm kind of dividing the hat up into these sections, and then in each section I'm just going to draw different designs or patterns. Here I've got snowflakes, and then a wavy line. Maybe I'll do just little dots, whatever kind of patterns you can think of. I'm also going to add little highlights to the shoes, maybe to the lantern. And then now I'm going to add some whites to the trees. And I really want to kind of give the indication that there's some snow that has hit the trees too. It wouldn't make a ton of sense to have snow on the ground, but not on the trees as well. So I'm just using my white gouache. It's more opaque than watercolor. meaning you can't see through it as well. And I'm just adding some clumps of white to my trees. Now you can add snowflakes like this by just dotting with your brush the white gouache, but I have another way of adding snow that I like so much better, and that's actually to use a toothbrush. I dip it in the gouache and I use my thumb to spread it all over the painting, and it just has a more magical effect to it. Toothbrush is definitely my favorite way to apply snow. So maybe go and buy yourself a new toothbrush, save your old one, and use it for the snow effect. It just has such a nice like spray to it that just makes it look so nice. Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed painting with me today. I am wiping off my thumb here, and then I'm going to sign my name to say that it is a masterpiece. Please feel free to subscribe to my channel and check out more of my videos. I try to do a variety of videos throughout the month, some watercolor, some drawing, some art projects, but always something fun and exciting to check out relating to art. So yes, thank you for watching, and if you made it this far into the video, thanks for hanging in there with me. I hope you are able to create an adorable gnome like this guy right here. Have a fabulous day, and yeah, we'll see you again soon, I hope.